bringing now one of the most perceptive and smartest uh, young men in the country as far as a thinker. His piece is up on Chronicles. His piece is on American Mind. Just a really profound thinker about where America is and where America is in this fight against the globalists. Pedro Gonzalez. So Pedro, before we get to, I want to get to your piece on Afghanistan, and we are jammed for time because I got on my soapbox too long. Give us your assessment of where we are with the Biden regime right now, right? With how they've handled, their incompetence in handling things, their radical policies. As we're now 10 months into this thing, where do you think we stand?
Well, something that you'll hear from Republicans and conservatives is that the United States government has been humiliated under Biden. And my view of that is good. I don't think there's actually an easy way or a better way to convince people that the regime is bad, that it actually hates them as much as it hates Afghans, than witnessing everything that you're seeing now, from the spending deal to the Afghan refugee resettlement. And you could put that in quotations because it's more of like, no one agreed to this. No one agreed to resettling them, right? Same thing with the southern border and with what we're seeing right now, or at least what's coming to light. I mean, we knew what was going on in Afghanistan. The federal government knew that the war was a loss, that it was lost years ago. And they knew actually much worse than that. But they kept going. And they kept telling the public that not only were we winning, but everything was going well. We were building democracy. That is a complete lie. And unfortunately, and I think that it's understandable that it makes people uncomfortable, but I don't think there was actually a better way to convince people that this whole thing is built on lies and it hates you as much as it hates other people abroad. And you're seeing it now.
What for people that are getting the Great Awakening, which they're coming to this conclusion, right, and they understand, and that's why I think you're seeing Hispanic working class in the Rio Grande Valley. One of the big holdouts in this Pelosi thing is these congressmen down there because they see the numbers with working class Hispanics. As people get to this Great Awakening, that this is what the globalists want, and it's now time to take a stand. What is your and by the way, the piece in American Mind we're going to put up in the live chat. Let's get up on the screen. It's absolutely incredible. What is your path when you tell people to start thinking about this, when they get this construct and start to really understand? What is your recommended path out of here?
I think that Trump gave us, at least in 2016, a mandate that resonated broadly. If you look at this study by the New America Foundation in 2015, they found that the largest electorate in this country was what they define as populist, people that want to either keep immigration levels the same or restrict them, and in terms of spending, either reduce or keep it the same. I think this electorate remains untapped. These are people that are basically scattered between both parties because neither party really serves them. And they view things like immigration as an economic issue because a cultural and economic one, but economic in the sense that it affects their jobs and their wages. These are people that are, regardless of whether the fact they're Republicans or Democrats, they don't like the idea of spending $2 trillion building democracy in Afghanistan when every road that we build over there, every school that we build over there that gets blown up or torn out is a road or a school that could have been built here. So I actually think the mandate, the way forward is really easy. You just look back to the issues that were successful in 2016 that made Democrats swing for Trump, and then figure out how to articulate these issues better and how to go forward with them. The Republican Party has no interest in this for obvious reasons, because it conflicts with neoconservatism, which I think is still, unfortunately, the dominant ideology of the GOP. You're seeing that right now with Afghanistan. The Republicans are saying two things. We don't like the way that the withdrawal was done, but we're not necessarily against it, but we're going to trust the Biden administration to effectively vet and resettle all of these refugees. You see how incoherent that is on its face. And at least guys like Lindsey Graham are saying, more honestly, we should have never left. This is what Kevin McCarthy said. This is what Dan Crenshaw said. And at least Dan Crenshaw is supposed to be the face of the new GOP, right? The better GOP. And he's telling you, actually, it was a mistake to leave. And so the mask is off for most of the Republican Party in the sense that they were telling you for the last 4 years that they're populist and they've changed. Even the old birds like Graham and McCarthy had come around. They haven't. They don't want to change. And neoconservatism, the prevailing ideology of the GOP, dovetails neatly into the the broader neoliberal project that is basically the ideology of the United States regime. This is the ideology of inviting and invading the world. There's disagreement over the details, but there's actually not a lot of disagreement over the fundamentals. And that's the easiest way to understand it is just the term uniparty. That at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot of difference between Democrats and Republicans. Democrats just want to use a softer touch when we go to Afghanistan or whatever. Republicans are more of the view that, well, actually, we just need to drone strike the place. But all of this stuff comes home. What an empire, what a regime is willing to do in Afghanistan, it's going to do in Appalachia. And you're seeing that. For the last few years, overtly, we've been talking about half of this country as if they're insurgents. And even explicitly, you've got former Bush staffers referring to January 6th as worse than 9/11. You've got people that are comparing those who are maybe not even anti-vax or just not comfortable with getting the vaccine, referring to those people as Taliban. There was a former Obama official who said that people that refuse the vaccine are basically just like the suicide bombers who killed 13 U.S. troops on August 26th, that they go into crowds and they detonate and kill people. Like, you see this, and the Republican Party, for all of its rhetoric, what are they doing to stop this? What are they doing to prevent the national security apparatus that they helped build for the wars on terror in Iraq and Afghanistan? What are they doing to stop it from being turned on American citizens? Well, they're not doing a whole lot as far as I can see.
Do you agree that one way we can actually flush out the Republicans, the neoliberal, neocon Republicans, is with this coming on September 30th when the government runs out of money, because they're going to try to do one of these funky CRs that kicks the can down the road and add all kind of amnesty and everything that to it, and the debt ceiling? Are these the two? Because at the end of the day, when the regime doesn't have cash, when they don't have access to the deplorables checkbook, it is deplorables. Remember, if you can't sell the bonds, which they can't do enough, they can't raise taxes enough, or there's no growth, so tax revenues increase because of growth, they got to print money. And print money is just putting it on your shoulders. That's not free. That's on the full faith and credit of the United States, which happens to be the deplorables. Is this the time to have this fight? Is this the time to make sure that we know who's on what side?
I think it's a good indicator. It's a good way to see who is and is not aware of what time it is and who simply doesn't care. But we've had these fights before. We've had a lot of moments actually where we've said this is it. This is where we will finally ferret out the rhinos and figure out who's on our side and who isn't. But we never actually seem to learn from these things, and it's not clear why. It might be, I think, because we'll tell ourselves that, but then we'll quickly turn to focusing on all of the crazy stuff Democrats are doing and all the stuff that the woke people are doing, and we'll get distracted and forget about the fact that oftentimes your worst enemies are the people that are standing beside you and behind you. And I think that's the truest thing for the GOP, is that we'll say, this is it. We're going to dig our heels in and get rid of the rhinos. And then Biden will say something or do something crazy, and often it is crazy, or we'll hear about something like Portland is going to boycott travel and commerce with Texas or something like that, and we'll get distracted by those things, and then suddenly we'll start warming up, or not. I should not say warming up, because we'll never warm up to Mitch McConnell, but we'll lose sight of the fact that guys like McConnell and McCarthy, they're your enemies as much as Joe Biden is. Just because they're a Republican doesn't change that fact. And after all this time, they have not fundamentally changed their minds. And so it's a kind of cycle of outrage. We get angry, we say this is it, and then we forget because we get angry at something else. So it's really on us.
Pedro, how do people track you? How do they follow you on social media? How do they get to your writings? Because this is a guy that you've got to get. You're not going to agree with everything he says, but I got to tell you, one of the most powerful thinkers in this country. How do people get to you?
So my Twitter is at EMERITACOS, and you can read Chronicles and our sister publication if you go to charlemagneInstitute.org. You'll find links to both of our publications and all of our social media there.